decades, the global defense community has repeated a familiar story. In order to secure national airspace in the 21st century, a country must buy the most technologically advanced, most expensive, and most maintenance-heavy fighter jet available. That narrative has shaped budgets, procurement strategies, and political expectations across the Western world. But as more nations take a closer look at their actual missions, geography, and long-term sustainment needs, a very different picture is beginning to emerge. At the center of this shift is Sweden's Gripen, a fighter that, despite its lighter footprint and lower operating costs, is quietly challenging the assumptions that have dominated modern air power thinking. What makes the Gripen especially interesting for North American audiences is that it doesn't fit neatly into traditional categories. It isn't a bargain bin aircraft built for countries with limited budgets, nor is it an ultra-stealthy, high-end strike platform created for first night of war scenarios like the F-35. Instead, the Gripen E represents a third path, a sophisticated, highly survivable, extremely flexible multi-role fighter designed around real-world operations rather than theoretical prestige. And in a time when many nations, including Canada, are revisiting questions about sovereignty, Arctic defense, and the costs of sustaining advanced fleets, the Gripen's approach is becoming harder to ignore. The starting point for any comparison is cost. On paper, both the F-35A and Gripen E carry flyaway prices in the $80–90 million range. But defense experts in both Washington and Ottawa know that flyaway cost tells only a small part of the story. The F-35 requires specialized ground equipment, unique climate-controlled infrastructure, and an extensive initial spare parts package before it can reach operational readiness. Several countries have seen their real acquisition costs balloon far beyond the advertised sticker price. Saab takes a different approach. Its export packages are intentionally more transparent, bundling training, initial support, and weapons into a clear, predictable structure. For countries like Canada, which has faced years of scrutiny over fighter procurement budgets, this predictability is not a minor advantage. It is central to long-term planning. A fighter jet may be purchased once, but it must be flown, maintained, and upgraded for 30 to 40 years. This brings us to the most consequential difference of all: operating cost. Gripen E's cost per flight hour is projected to remain well under $15,000, while older Gripen CD models operate between $4,700 and $8,000 per hour. The F-35A, by contrast, still exceeds $36,000 per flight hour in 2025, far above the long-promised goal of $25,000 by 2025, a target that remains out of reach. This gap is not merely a budget line. It shapes pilot proficiency, sortie availability, and real-world capability. A nation can fly 3 Gripen sorties for the cost of 1 F-35 sortie. For a country like Canada, responsible for patrolling the world's second-largest landmass and a vast Arctic region, that difference is operationally decisive. A fighter that is too expensive to fly frequently is, in practice, a fighter that spends much of its life inside a hangar. The deeper reason behind these contrasting costs lies in the design philosophies of the two aircraft. The F-35 is an American technological powerhouse built for penetrating heavily defended airspace. Its low observability, sensor fusion, and networked warfare capabilities are unmatched in certain mission sets. But those strengths come with requirements that make the aircraft dependent on a massive logistical ecosystem: specialized coatings, proprietary diagnostic tools, climate-controlled environments, and a global sustainment system managed through Odin, formerly ALIS. This system gives the United States an extraordinary ability to coordinate the health of the worldwide F-35 fleet. But for partner nations, it also creates dependency. Gripen's philosophy, by contrast, was forged during the Cold War, when Sweden expected to operate under the constant threat of a superpower neighbor. That reality shaped every engineering decision. A fighter might need to operate from improvised runways, narrow rural roads, or short highway segments. It might need to be refueled, rearmed, and even have its engine swapped by a small team of conscript-level technicians using standard tools. It would need to disperse quickly, survive strikes on major bases, and continue generating sorties under extreme pressure. The result of that philosophy lives inside Gripen E today. The aircraft can be turned around for an air-to-air mission in under 10 minutes. It does not require specialized hangars or large teams of highly trained maintenance crews. It is explicitly designed for countries with harsh climates, long distances between bases, and a need for continuous, high-tempo operations. That is one reason the Gripen has gained renewed attention in Canada's Arctic security circles. The Canadian North is vast, sparsely populated, and lacking the support infrastructure of southern provinces. The ability to operate from shorter runways and dispersed forward locations is not simply convenient, it is essential. The F-35 and Gripen also differ in their roles on the battlefield. The F-35 excels in first-day-of-war missions, destroying enemy air defenses, striking high-value targets, and gathering intelligence deep inside hostile airspace. But Canada's daily missions under NORAD are very different. They involve intercepting unknown aircraft, enforcing sovereignty, patrolling maritime approaches, and monitoring the Arctic. Most NORAD missions do not require stealth. They require range, availability, readiness, and the ability to carry a variety of weapons without compromising flight performance. Here again, Gripen offers a distinct advantage. With 10 external hardpoints, Gripen E can carry a flexible, heavy weapon load without affecting its core performance characteristics. This includes the Meteor Beyond Visual Range missile, one of the most capable long-range air-to-air weapons in the world. When a country is responsible for maintaining air presence over enormous distances, more missiles in the sky can be more valuable than stealth alone. The difference in design philosophies also shapes what pilots experience. Gripen's handling characteristics are intentionally more conventional, making the transition from training aircraft smoother and reducing pipeline bottlenecks. The F-35's flight control system is extraordinarily advanced, but pilots often describe it as flying a computer, requiring more specialized transition training. With lower flight hour costs, Gripen-equipped air forces can also provide significantly more real-world flying time, not just simulator hours, to their pilots. For the United States, these contrasts highlight an important debate. Should every mission be built around the highest-end, most expensive platform, or should a mix of capabilities, high-end and high availability, offer more resilience? For Canada, the question is even sharper. The country must make decisions that reflect its unique geography, its NORAD responsibilities, its budget, and its desire for technological autonomy. Part 1 of this analysis reveals a simple truth. The Gripen E is not a compromise. It is a deliberate, strategically mature answer to the everyday missions that most air forces must conduct. It challenges the assumption that more complex equals more capable, and reminds both Americans and Canadians that real strength comes not just from technology, but from readiness, sustainability, and smart engineering. If the first part of this analysis laid out the philosophical divide between the Gripen and the F-35, The second part brings that contrast firmly into the operational world, where maintenance, logistics, training, and sovereignty determine whether a fighter fleet thrives or struggles. These are the areas where air forces either gain the ability to fly often, train intensively, and respond to crises, or become dependent on slow supply chains, restricted data systems, and budgets strained by every hour the aircraft leaves the ground. And for Canada, a country with vast distances, limited Arctic infrastructure, and a national defense strategy tied closely to NORAD, these factors matter far more than abstract debates about stealth or platform prestige. One of the most defining advantages of the Gripen is its maintenance philosophy. While the F-35 requires large teams of specialized technicians, temperature-controlled hangars, proprietary diagnostic hardware, and continuous integration with the U.S.-managed Odin logistics network, the Gripen was built from day one to operate in far harsher, less predictable environments. Swedish engineers designed the aircraft with the expectation that it might need to switch bases abruptly, disperse across highways, operate from short stretches of rural roads, or carry out high-tempo operations with minimal support. This philosophy has real-world consequences. A Gripen E can be refueled and rearmed for an air-to-air mission in under 10 minutes, even by a small ground crew with standard tools. An engine change in the field, something unimaginable for most modern fighters, can be done quickly and efficiently. The emphasis is always on keeping the aircraft flying, not keeping it in a hangar. In comparison, the F-35's maintenance model is built around carefully controlled environments and a global supply chain that must flow smoothly for the aircraft to remain operationally available. For Canada, this distinction has enormous significance. While cities like Edmonton, Vancouver, Ottawa, and Toronto have strong infrastructure, much of Canada's Arctic region does not. Northern communities such as Inuvik, Rankin Inlet, Yellowknife, and Iqaluit face brutal temperatures, limited runways, and logistical challenges that can shut down supply chains for days at a time. In these conditions, a fighter that can operate independently of specialized facilities is a strategic asset. A fighter that cannot is a strategic liability. Another critical difference lies in pilot training and readiness, areas where operating cost becomes a direct determinant of capability. Gripen C/D models have proven costs of $4,700 to $8,000 per flight hour, while Gripen E remains at under $15,000. These numbers allow air forces to maintain high training tempos without bankrupting their budgets. The F-35's cost of over $36,000 per hour restricts real-world flying, forcing many operators to rely heavily on simulators. And although F-35 simulators are among the most advanced ever built, pilot communities across the globe continue to emphasize one truth. There is no substitute for actual G-forces, real turbulence, real decision-making, and real envelope testing in the sky. In practical terms, an Air Force flying Gripen simply produces more experienced pilots. More flight hours lead to sharper instincts, more advanced tactics, faster decision-making, and a deeper bench of instructor-grade aviators. In Canada, where many pilots have expressed frustration over limited flying hours during their CF-18 careers, the ability to triple sortie rates without tripling budgets would fundamentally transform the Royal Canadian Air Force's readiness. The nature of data and sovereignty is another area where the aircraft diverge sharply. The F-35's Odin system centralizes maintenance data and mission planning in ways that optimize global fleet management, but also place significant control in American hands. Canada, like all F-35 customers, must rely on this system and must trust that it will always be available, always secure, and always responsive during crises. Some Canadian defense experts have raised concerns about whether this dependence could become a vulnerability, especially during heightened tensions or if the United States prioritizes its own fleet during emergencies. Gripen, by contrast, was designed for nations that prioritize sovereignty and independence in mission data, upgrades, and sustainment. Saab offers customers options for integrating national software, operating their own mission data centers, and maintaining long-term control over their fleet without foreign gatekeepers. For a country like Canada, where political debates often emphasize autonomy from American defense systems, this characteristic holds deep relevance. The weapons philosophy underpinning each aircraft also highlights their divergent roles. The F-35's stealth is optimized when carrying weapons internally, limiting payload. Once external pylons are added to increase firepower, the aircraft loses its low observable profile. Gripen E, on the other hand, was built to carry weapons externally without compromising its core mission. Its 10 external hardpoints allow a flexible loadout of air-to-air missiles, anti-ship weapons, air-to-ground precision munitions, and reconnaissance pods. In air policing missions, the daily bread and butter of NORAD, having more missiles ready, immediately visible, and available is often far more effective than stealth. The Meteor missile, integrated fully on Gripen, is another key factor. This long-range air dominance weapon is widely regarded as one of the most capable beyond-visual-range missiles in the world. When defending vast airspace like Canada's, it offers a decisive advantage: the ability to engage hostile aircraft at extreme ranges, long before they pose a threat to national territory. From an industrial standpoint, the divergence grows even wider. The F-35 program is built around a multinational production ecosystem centered in the United States. Canadian companies do participate, earning billions of dollars in contracts over the years, but their role is tied to the overall health of the global F-35 fleet and decisions made in American corporate and political centers. Canada has no control over final assembly, no authority over production rates, and limited influence on future upgrades. Gripen offers something fundamentally different: sovereign industrial partnership. Saab has repeatedly offered countries like Canada the possibility of local assembly, full or partial technology transfer, domestic software integration, and long-term sustainment capability. For a country with a proud aerospace history, Bombardier, Pratt & Whitney Canada, CA, Magellan. Aerospace. This is not merely a defense procurement issue. It is an opportunity to revive national aerospace identity and recreate high-tech jobs across multiple provinces. Canada's industrial base is capable of far more than component manufacturing. A Gripen partnership would allow the country to regain the control it once had during the era of the Avro Arrow: control over assembly, software, mission systems, and long-term upgrade cycles. Few opportunities of this scale still exist in the global fighter market. As Canada reassesses its defense posture in the changing Arctic, these differences gain even more weight. Melting sea ice, new shipping routes, increased Russian activity, and rising geopolitical tensions make the North more important than ever. High availability, low maintenance demands, and the ability to disperse fighters across remote operating locations will define Arctic air power in the next 20 years. Gripen was built for precisely this world. By contrast, the F-35's temperature-sensitive coatings, large logistical footprint, and dependency on Odin raise significant questions about how effectively it could sustain operations far from southern Canadian bases. While the F-35 is a strong platform for joint U.S.-led missions, Canada's most urgent missions are national, sovereignty patrols, NORAD intercepts, Arctic monitoring, and defensive readiness. Those are missions that reward endurance, flexibility, and sortie generation, not deep strike stealth. Part 2 exposes what many Canadian analysts have increasingly acknowledged. Canada's fighter needs are unique, and they cannot be judged solely by the same metrics used by larger, offensive-focused militaries. The Gripen E aligns closely with Canada's real-world missions, its geographic challenges, and its long-term need for predictability and independence. As Canada edges closer to decisions that will shape its air power for the next 3 to 4 decades, the conversation around what the Royal Canadian Air Force truly needs becomes more urgent and more honest. The global assumption has long been that the world's most expensive fifth-generation fighter represents the pinnacle of modern capability. But capability is not defined by marketing terms, platform prestige, or political momentum. Capability is defined by how frequently your aircraft can fly, how widely it can operate, how long you can sustain high-tempo missions, and how much control your nation retains over its own fleet. And when those metrics are applied, Canada's needs diverge sharply from the profile that the F-35 was designed around. Canada's everyday missions, NORAD intercepts, Arctic patrols, maritime surveillance, sovereignty enforcement, do not require penetrating enemy airspace or stealth-enabled deep strikes. They require endurance. They require range. They require the ability to launch multiple sorties from isolated bases under brutal temperatures. They require predictable sustainment, low failure rates, and an aircraft that can operate without an enormous logistical infrastructure behind it. Gripen E was built for precisely these conditions because Sweden has lived with similar strategic realities for decades. The Arctic is changing faster than at any time in modern history. As sea ice recedes, shipping routes expand, and major powers increase their presence in the region. Canada's northern approaches are shifting from remote boundary zones to active geopolitical arenas. Russia continues to maintain heavy installations and long-range aviation assets along its northern coast. China's ambitions in the Arctic, while less overt, are growing in influence. In such an environment, the ability to maintain persistent air presence becomes a matter of national identity and territorial control. A fighter that can sit on the ground due to cost constraints or maintenance requirements is a poor tool for meeting these challenges. Gripen's ability to operate from short runways, rugged airstrips, and forward locations gives Canada options that few high-end fighters can offer. Its ease of maintenance and low operating cost allow for more pilots, more flying hours, and more readiness across the fleet. In the Arctic, where the nearest major base may be thousands of kilometers away, a fighter must be able to function with minimal support while still delivering credible deterrence. Gripen is built around that reality. The F-35, with its temperature-sensitive coatings and reliance on climate-controlled hangars, must be supported by infrastructure that simply does not exist in much of northern Canada and would cost billions to build and maintain. The question of sovereignty is equally important. Canada has long been committed to maintaining independent mission data, secure national decision-making, and operational freedom within NORAD. But the F-35's Odin system, while technologically powerful, cannot be separated from U.S. oversight. Mission data files, system updates, maintenance schedules, and part flows are all tied into an American-managed network. In a world where cyber disruptions, geopolitical pressure, and shifting alliances can create unpredictable constraints. This dependence raises legitimate concerns. Gripen offers a different model, one where Canada can operate its own mission data centers, control its own upgrade cycles, integrate Canadian-made components, and preserve its sovereignty over long-term fleet management. This model aligns naturally with Canada's defense culture, a culture that values cooperation with the United States, but also protects its ability to operate independently when required. For many Canadian policymakers and defense planners, this independence is not a luxury. It is a necessity. There is also a broader economic dimension that Canada cannot ignore. The F-35 program does provide industrial participation, but it does so on American terms. Canadian companies build components for the global fleet, but they do not build the aircraft for Canada. They do not assemble final airframes, do not control subsystem integration, and cannot independently sustain the fleet. This keeps Canada in the role of contributor rather than owner. Gripen offers something more transformative: technology transfer, potential domestic assembly, integration of Canadian avionics and software, and long-term industrial autonomy. A Gripen partnership could reignite Canada's aerospace sector in ways that the F-35 program cannot. It could support thousands of jobs, expand domestic R&D, and give Canada the ability to shape future upgrades alongside Sweden, a country with similar values, similar strategic thinking, and a shared commitment to transparent, sovereign defense solutions. For a nation that once dreamed big with the Avro Arrow, this represents a rare opportunity to reclaim leadership rather than participation. Taken together, these operational, economic, and sovereignty-related considerations expose a central truth. Canada's fighter decision is not simply about acquiring an aircraft. It is about defining the future posture of the country's entire defense architecture. Does Canada want a smaller, highly complex fleet optimized primarily for US-led coalition warfare? Or does it want a larger, more available fleet optimized for Canadian geography, Canadian missions, Canadian climate, and Canadian independence? Gripen represents the second path, a path rooted in pragmatism rather than prestige. It challenges the idea that the most expensive option is inherently the best. It reinforces the principle that capability must be measured in flying hours, sortie generation, and readiness, not marketing labels. And it aligns with the long-standing Canadian instinct to protect its own sovereignty while cooperating with allies from a position of strength. The Gripen E is not a cheaper alternative. It is a different vision of air power, one built around resilience, flexibility, and national control. For Canada, that vision aligns with the realities of today and the uncertainties of tomorrow. A fighter that can fly often, operate anywhere, and be sustained affordably for decades is not just a procurement choice. It is a strategic advantage. As Canada stands at this crossroads, the final question is not whether Gripen is good enough. The question is whether Canada chooses an air force built for its actual missions, or one built for someone else's. Thank you for watching and for taking the time to explore these important questions about Canada's future air power and the role modern fighters play in North American security. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more in-depth analysis like this, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support really helps us reach more people who care about defense, technology, and the future of our skies. I'd also love to hear your perspective. What do you think matters most for Canada's next fighter? Cost, capability, or sovereignty? Do you believe Canada should prioritize Arctic performance and high sortie rates over stealth? And which part of this discussion, training, maintenance, or industrial benefits, stood out most to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights and experiences always make these conversations richer and more meaningful, especially when we all bring different backgrounds and viewpoints to the table. Thanks again for being here. Wishing you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.